In this section of Sportswear Garage, starting a home-based screen printing business, we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to buy. First of all, you'll need a press. Now, if you maybe you already have some equipment, maybe it's a 4-color press, something like that, and that's going to be perfectly fine. But if you haven't bought equipment, I'm going to recommend that you buy a 6-color manual press. The reason for that is with a 6-color press, you can print just about anything. You can do a full color photographic reproduction on a black t-shirt with a 6-color press. Now, you're going to be doing a lot of 6-color work. You're probably not. Most of us, the bread and butter for screen printers is 1 and 2 and 3 color work. You know, Jim's Towing Service on the front and a phone number on the back. We all love that customer. But with a 6-color press, you do have that option of doing some very, very higher end type of decorating. This particular picture, this is a 4-station, well, actually it's a 6-station, 6-color press. A 4-station, 6-color press would be perfectly fine. By stations, I'm talking about the number of platens where you can load shirts onto. The reason that you want to have multiple platens, though, and it's not so that you can print on one side and somebody else print on the other, it's so that when you are printing, you can, say, print a white underbase and then move that platen over under your flash unit. And we'll talk about flash units in a minute, to gel that ink before you come back and print color. And you want it to be able to index around or move rather than having one stationary platen if you don't already have some equipment. The next thing you'll need is a conveyor dryer. A conveyor dryer is a dryer with a belt where you lay the shirt on the belt and it goes through, and when it comes out the other end, it's cured. Now, can you cure other ways? You can, but if you want to do any real production, you really need to have a conveyor dryer. Conveyor dryers come in all shapes and sizes. Think about this, though. If you buy a conveyor dryer that can keep up with your regular production, and by regular production, I mean an average person, once they get some experience, can print about 100 single color shirts, load, unload, put them on the dryer belt in an hour. So you need a dryer that will be able to keep up with that type of production. But if you can afford to buy a little bit bigger dryer, you'll be surprised how quickly you'll be thinking about buying an additional press, hiring an employee to run that press while you're running the other. So if you can afford to buy so that you can grow into a dryer, all the better. But sometimes your space limits what you're capable of doing. A flash unit. You do need a flash cure unit if you print any dark garments. And a flash unit is basically a dryer that's on a stand, usually an infrared dryer. And what will happen, as I was saying before, is you'll print the shirt, the white underbase, you'll put that under the flash unit for about 15 seconds. Then you're ready, till it's dry to the touch, by the way, then you're ready to print the colors on top. Now, I mentioned in the last section about a lot of misinformation on the internet. Some people will tell you there that if you do a 5-color print, you print a color, you flash it, you print a color, you flash it, print it. Absolutely not. Plastisol ink is made to be printed wet on wet, which means if I'm printing a 5-color print and that first color is a white underbase, I'm going to print the white, flash it, come back, and then print my other 4 colors right on top of each other. That's the way it's meant to be done. So the flash unit, really, its single purpose is to gel the ink for your white underbase. An exposure unit. You need to expose your screens. When you coat your screens, you're going to be using a photosensitive emulsion. And once it's dry, under UV light, it will harden that emulsion. So you're going to put your film positive there on the glass. You're going to put the screen with the emulsion on it on top of it, clamp down the cover, hit the switch, and it's going to expose that screen to UV light. And by doing that, it will harden the emulsion every place where the film positive isn't. And then you're going to take it to the sink, wash it out, and you're going to have your screen ready to go. Lots of different exposure units. A pinpoint light source, meaning a single bulb, is the best light source that you can get because you're going to get the cleanest screens. You're not going to have any underburning by having multiple light sources so that the light hits the film positive from different directions. So the absolute best option is a pinpoint light source exposure unit. A washout sink, you can either build your own washout sink or buy one professionally made, but you're going to be using this sink for washing out your screens after you expose them. You're going to be using this sink for reclaiming the screens. Once you're done with that screen, you're never going to use it again. You can take all the emulsion out. You'll do that in a washout sink as well. You might notice in the picture that there's a plexiglass in the back of these exposure units. And the reason for that is you can have lights in there, so it's easier to see when you're washing those screens out. So highly recommend getting a washout sink that has a light source in the back. A power washer. You can use a power washer for reclaiming screens. In other words, that screen, you're never going to print it again. So you're going to put some emulsion remover solution on that screen, take your power washer and blast out the emulsion that's have been hardened on that screen. There are lots of varieties of power washers. And to be honest, the cheapest power washer at Target and Walmart will probably do the job for you. So you don't need to go overboard in buying a power washer. A heat press, you don't have to have a heat press unless you want to do team apparel or you want to do transfers. And by team apparel, most teams, including professional football teams, use heat applied vinyl for their numbering. So it's really the easiest, best way to do that. So if you're ever going to do any numbering, you can also make your own heat transfers. Heat transfers are plastisol ink. So they're just simply plastisol printed onto transfer paper. So it's something else that you might want to invest in. A heat press, you can also use it for adding rhinestones and studs and things like that to a printed shirt as well. Be sure and buy a good quality heat press. There are lots of cheap import heat presses for $250, $350. A good quality heat press is going to cost you anywhere from $1,200 to probably $1,600. But a good quality heat press, you're going to be using the exact same heat press 20 years from now. So it's maybe a little higher price than you want to pay right now, but that heat press will be with you potentially for the life of your business. Film output. Again, I mentioned in the first section about an Epson desktop printer. Talk to your screen printing supplier. Most of them sell Epson printers. The RIP software I mentioned that will be specific to screen printing. And you'll also, at the same time, buy clear waterproof film to print your film positives on. That waterproof film, most commonly people buy 13 by 18 sheets. They're roughly $1 per sheet. You can also buy even as small as 8.5 by 11. And with that, you can do some left chest and things like that. And then you're talking more like 40 cents per sheet. Screens. You'll need a variety of screens. Now, again, I'm going to refer back to the internet where a lot of folks say, well, you just buy 110 mesh screens. Do not buy 110 mesh screens. The mesh count, as you see here, 156, 230, 87. The higher the mesh count, the smaller the holes. 156 means 156 threads per inch. 87 you see on the slide there, that means 87 threads per inch. So the lower the number, the more ink that comes through that screen. I use, for the most part, a 156. Some people call it a 160, but a 156 mesh screen for most of the printing I do. So I want a dozen of those. For fine lines, I'm going to go up to a 230 mesh, so I'm going to buy 6 of those. An 87 mesh I'm going to be using for puff and for athletic prints where the ink's a little thicker. I'll probably get 6 of those. And then you just buy screens as needed. And as I mentioned in the previous section, an aluminum screen with the mesh in it, and you just order it according to the mesh count you want, you're talking $22 to $25. And that screen, depending on how busy you are, is going to last you 6 months to a year before you have to replace it. Bear in mind that screens are like, they're not like equipment. Screens are like ink and rags and things like that. It's a consumable. So you have to think of it that way. Think that when you're buying that screen, you're probably going to replace it somewhere down the road within the next year. Squeegees, you buy them by the inch. You want to start with probably 6, roughly 15-inch medium durometer. Durometer is the stiffness of the blade. Most of what you do will be with a medium durometer squeegee. You want that squeegee to fit within the screen frame with at least an inch an inch space on either side. So if you start with 6 15-inch medium diameter squeegees, that's a good place to start. And then get 6 5-inch for left chests and things like that. So I don't want to pull a 15-inch squeegee if I'm just printing a 3 or 4-inch left chest logo. And then again, squeegees as needed. As I mentioned, you buy them by the inch. They're fairly inexpensive. You're going to be in the neighborhood of $1.50 an inch for the blade and the squeegee blade and the handles. So pretty inexpensive. You'll want to have screens or squeegees. Like if you're printing white ink, you'll want to have a squeegee that you just use for white ink. If you're printing medium colors, your royals and greens, then you'll have squeegees for that. And then for navy and black, you'll have another squeegee for that. And the reason you do that is because any ink that gets caught up in the blade as you're printing can work out and ruin your ink. So you will eventually have a whole collection of squeegees for different colors of ink. Speaking of inks, what do I need to buy? You know you're going to need white. You know you're going to need black. You know you're going to need the most common colors, the scarlet reds. Look at your local high schools and get those school colors. And then again, you buy ink as needed. You buy up a bunch of ink and then the first customer walks in and says, I need light purple. Well, you're probably going to have to order a quart of light purple for that customer. There's also a mixing system because sooner rather than later, someone's going to say to you, I need John Deere green. And John Deere green is PMS, Pantone Matching System number or whatever. And with a mixing system, you can type in that PMS number, Pantone Matching System number, and every corporation, every college, most every high school, they have a PMS number for each of their school colors or corporate colors. And you type that in, and with this mixing system, you just put in by weight, and you'll have to buy a scale, but you put in by weight the different inks to make that color. And you can say, I want to make a pint, and it will tell you the formula for making just a pint of that ink. You'll also want to buy some quart containers. While you're buying ink, also buy curable reducer. Now, there's another product called viscosity reducer. You don't want to buy viscosity reducer. Curable reducer, and what I'm talking about is a chemical that you can put in your ink to make it thinner. Curable reducer, they will tell you that, you can use up to say 5%, but you can't mess it up. If you put too much in, it won't ruin the ink. Viscosity reducer, if you put in the wrong amount, it can ruin the ink so that you don't necessarily know it until you go to wash that garment and then you have washout issues. So to thin your ink, use curable reducer. A spotting gun. Spotting gun, you're looking at probably $100 to $150, and basically it's a sprayer with a needle spray. That you have a cleaning solution in that will clean up plastisol ink. So if you get a thumbprint on a shirt, think, oh no, this shirt's ruined. You run it through the dryer because it only takes out cured plastisol. Then you spray it with this spotting gun, and it will take out dried plastisol. So now you don't want to do a whole shirt because you'd use so much cleaning solution that you wouldn't make any money on the shirt. But for fingerprints, drips, things like that, it can salvage a shirt for you. So make sure you get a spotting gun. Emulsion. You're going to need emulsion for coating your screens. Without going into a lot of discussion about different types of emulsion, I recommend that you buy dual cure emulsion. The reason I say that is because it's the easiest to use and it's the most forgiving. Dual cure emulsion, maybe on your exposure unit, might expose your shirt in 3.5 minutes. If you expose it for 3 minutes, it'll still work. If you expose it for 5 minutes, it'll still work. So it's very, very forgiving, especially for somebody starting out. When I've had nearly 100 production floor employees, I still use dual cure because I don't want there to be any stumbling blocks, any bottlenecks in the process by using an emulsion that's very exacting. If I'm 5 seconds too long exposing, it overexposed. I don't want to get involved in that. So talk to your supplier about getting a dual cure emulsion. Scoop coater is scoop coater, as you see here in the picture. This is what we coat our screens with. Scoop coaters, again, you buy them by the inch. You want to have about a 1-inch clearance on each side inside of the screen frame. If you get a nick in a scoop coater, you have to throw it away because you'll see it in the emulsion, and you can see it in your print. But again, very inexpensive to buy, and you can certainly have more than one on your floor. The emulsion remover, that's the chemical that you spray on the screen and then take your power washer to reclaim that screen. Now, some people save all their screens. And, if you have a dated event, maybe something was July 4th, 1998. Well, chances are pretty good they're not coming back to buy any more of those shirts. So you can use that screen again. I like to have all my screens into process. The only screens that I save are screens that maybe as Jim's towing service I mentioned, maybe Jim comes in once a month and orders shirts. I'll probably hold on to that screen. But any other screens, if somebody comes in once every 6 months, I'm going to reclaim that screen. And when they come in, I'm going to burn another screen because I want to use that asset. I want to keep using that screen over and over again. Degreaser is basically pure detergent. But here's the important thing. A lot of folks don't understand how important it is. You need to degrease your screens before you coat them every single time. What degreaser does is it takes off any oils from your hands. It'll take off chemicals, dust, lint. And the reason we want to do that is because emulsion is water-based. If you have your hand on that screen and you haven't degreased it before you coat it, the oil from your hand will repel the emulsion and cause a weak area that's going to cause an issue for you as you're printing the shirts. Press wash is a chemical that you use for cleaning your screens and your squeegees on the press. If you're going to save Jim's Towing Service screen, I'm going to use press wash to clean the ink out of that screen. I'm going to use it also for cleaning my squeegees because it's not very harsh. It doesn't take very much. Don't dump it on there. It just takes a little bit to clean a screen. Ink degrader. Ink degrader is the product I'm going to use that I have ink in my screen. I'm going to scrape it out as much as I can, but there's still ink in that screen. But I'm not going to keep that screen. I'm going to reclaim it. So I'll take it to my sink, spray ink degrader on it, wipe it out, and then at that time I'm going to reclaim the screen. So I'm going to use press wash if I'm saving the screen. I'm going to use an ink degrader if I'm getting rid of the screen. Brushes, you'll need to have several brushes in your shop. Buy soft bristle brushes. You can also get non-abrasive pads. You want a separate one for your ink degrader, a separate one for your emulsion remover, a separate one for your degreaser. You don't want to mix those up because, for instance, if you use a screen or squeegee if you use a brush that you've used emulsion remover with, you don't want to put degreaser on there because you're just going to be spreading that chemical around on the screen. Tape and a tape gun. You want to have tape for taping the insides of your screen. When you put emulsion on your screen, there's an edge all the way around that you want to tape over. Now, there are tapes specifically made for screen printing. If you don't want to spend a little extra money for it, you can use a box sealing tape. Do not buy the cheapest box sealing tape that you can find at uline.com or wherever. Get a higher end box sealing tape because the better the box sealing tape, when you peel that tape off, it'll take the adhesive with it. The really, really cheap tape the adhesive will be left behind, and you don't want that to happen. So, and another reason you want to tape the inside of those screens is once you clean the ink out, then you peel the tape out, and it really speeds the cleaning process. Temperature tapes. You need this to test for cure. You're going to buy temperature tapes, and all of your suppliers are going to carry these. You're going to buy temperature strip number 5. And the reason we want number 5 is because that's going to test the temperature range that we need to cure plastisol. It's going to test that 320 degree temperature. It looks like a little thermometer. They come a dozen in a pack. They peel apart. They're perforated. They have adhesive on the back. What I want you to do is take that tape and don't put it on the top of the shirt. Put it inside the shirt under the print and send it down the dryer belt. It'll turn black up to the highest temperature it got to. If it turned black up to 320 degrees, then you know that ink film is not only cured on top, but underneath where it touches the shirt. So it's a really easy process. There's no better way to test or test a cure than to wash the shirt, but these temperature strips will certainly get you well on the way. Spray adhesive, I mentioned this before. You can buy a low-tax spray adhesive specifically made for fabric. You buy that from your screen printing supplier. It comes either a mist or a web. Mist looks like spray paint. Web looks more like Spider-Man coming out. Again, it's really a matter of personal preference. There is a liquid adhesive that you can pour on the platen and use a small squeegee blade that comes with it to spread it around, wait for that to dry, and then you can use it for the same purpose. The next section coming up, part 3, will be the business of screen printing.